World's Yearling Sale. Make plans for the Keeneland September Yearling Sale, September 13th through the 24th. Visit theworldsyearlingsale.com to learn more.
Good morning. It is 9:13, Wednesday, July 28th. This is the TDN Writers Room presented by Keeneland. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm the associate editor of the Thoroughbred Daily News, and today's my half birthday. All I want is for Zach Wilson to sign his freaking rookie contract.
Well, happy half birthday, Joe. My name is Bill Finley. I'm the district sales manager for the Northeast region for the Thoroughbred Daily News.
Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable, and I'm happy to announce that Sue Finley and I finished third place in a pickleball tournament this weekend, which means now I am black type.
That's what the fans are clamoring for, is the weekly pickleball update. We appreciate that, John. We got to get that sponsored. That's the only thing I think.
Look at that. Do you want to know what the scores were of all 16 games?
Sure.
Okay, because we have some time. So
we have since nobody under the age of 73 plays, it's like Geritol or a nursing home would be a nursing home chain would be a perfect sponsor.
We need to get that and the Bob Baffert legal segment both sponsored.
How can we get that to Pepto-Bismol? I mean,
Geritol.
Geritol,
yeah. Remember
Geritol?
that? Used to advertise in like the 80s?
I don't even remember that one.
Yeah,
That's even before my time.
We got lots of options. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Take part in the Keeneland November experience this fall. The entry deadline is Monday, August 2nd. You can learn more at november.keeneland.com. All right, so we didn't have a huge weekend of racing, but there was one race in particular I wanted to talk about, and it's not Caravel, believe it or not. I tried to do an all Caravel segment for this week's show because she has become to me what Gamine is to John. But the race of the week, I think, was the Coaching Club American Oaks and Maracuja's upset victory over Malathaat. Now, I don't want to disparage Malathaat. I thought she ran well considering she was kind of under the gun from the rail in that race. But, I can't lie and say I didn't take a little bit of pleasure in her losing just because of the announcement after the Kentucky Oaks, after they were like briefly considering running her in the Belmont Stakes, the then subsequent announcement that they were only going to run her 3 more times the rest of the year. So if you're keeping track, they committed to 3 starts in 6 months for the leading 3-year-old filly, which says to me that you're kind of trying to do as little as possible to secure that Eclipse trophy and then whisk her off to the breeding shed, which I'm against. I think it's better when horses run more. I think we can all agree on that. But the other thing about that race that was interesting to me and what kind of gave me a little bit of satisfaction in seeing an upset win was that there was only 4 horses entered in the race, which is absolutely staggering to me that you could have a $500,000 grade 1 age restricted race at Saratoga and only 4 horses show up. Like, to me, that indicates a little bit of a sickness, which I think is a lot of people not running their horses frequently enough, only running their horses when things are absolutely perfect, and really ducking top contenders. Like, Malathaat is a very nice filly, but she's not ruffian. She's not, at least not yet one of these great all-time fillies. And for only 3 people to say, I'm going to take a shot in this $500,000 age-restricted grade 1 at Saratoga, that to me was honestly embarrassing. And I was glad to see that there was an upset. And hopefully it shows people that, just run your horses. Second and third pay well. It's not a disgrace to lose every once in a while. Those were the main takeaways to me for me in that race, was that it goes to show that run your horses more and don't be afraid to take a shot. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, Joe, I agree with you on all points and all very good points. And Rob Atras, by the way, former assistant to Roberto Diodoro, gets his first grade 1 win with Maracuja. The thing about Malathaat was that I think a lot of people, maybe even the owners themselves, were getting a little bit carried away here with her. Like you said, a very, very nice filly. You said she's not roughy, and I'd say she's not Rachel Alexandra. And I don't think anybody ever really, if you look at her form, her buyer numbers, I don't think anybody ever really thought that she was going to be. But, back to the 4-horse thing, and this was not an isolated incident, unfortunately. Between now and the next 100 shows we do, we'll have dozens and dozens of chances to talk about the 5 horses here, the 4 horses here. And, how does racing correct this problem? As long as people want to handle horses or treat them like they treat Malathaat, they don't want to run. They want to run only when it's an absolutely perfect situation. We're going to get more and more of that. But I think think one thing, and it would be kind of sad to see, but at some point in time, I think Toba has got to, not the coaching club, I wouldn't say that shouldn't be a grade 1, but if you have all these watered down stakes races out there, there might be a time for a massive shift and change in how the graded stakes race committee treats some of these races, because you're seeing an awful lot of races now that are not grade 1 quality, or grade 2 races that are not grade 2 quality, or grade 3 races that should not be. 4 horses, albeit with the leading 3-year-old in the country. I agree though, it's not an embarrassment for Nair or anything else, but it is an embarrassment, and it is, again, one of these things about where the hell has this sport gone in this direction, and how do we ever fix something like this? I don't have the answers.
Well, I think it comes down to strictly to mathematics. And guys, you make fun of me for a lot of things, and rightfully so. But one of the things that you guys get on me about is when we go over a race and I say, this isn't a legitimate grade 3, this isn't a legitimate grade 2, this isn't a legitimate grade 1, and the grading systems have to change. And Bill, I think that falls right into your argument about they really need to review and look at, again, the coaching club is the coaching club. And there were 3 legitimate horses in the race, that finished first, second, and third. So that grade doesn't need to change. But what does need to change is the simple mathematics, which is there's 20,000 foals that are born every year now, not 30,000, not 35,000, not 40,000 in the glory days of breeding and racing. Yet there's still pretty much the same number of graded stake races. There's still pretty much the same number of racetracks that are out there. And as much as we all love some of these racetracks, some of them have to go. Some of them, from an economic standpoint, have to fail. And we're going to talk about Arlington Park later on in the show, and that's going to be really disappointing to a lot of people if that racetrack goes by the wayside. Monmouth Park is near and dear to our hearts and close in proximity to us, and we race there, for 30, 40 years. That racetrack, may be on its last legs. But there are some racetracks that unfortunately have to go by the wayside and have their races no longer be offered, or only their top races get transferred to some of these larger racetracks that are continuing to move forward, because otherwise you're going to continue to get these 4-horse fields. And it's not just an anomaly here in this one race. How many times have we looked at California races and seen 4 horses, 5 horses entered, scratched down to a 4-horse or a 3-horse field? Basically, whenever there's no place or show wagering whatsoever, that's a problem, especially when it comes down to graded stakes materials.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a problem, specifically in California. We've definitely noticed that a lot. But it's kind of ironic at Saratoga, because that's one of the places where you get these big fields a lot of times in allowance races that are grade 3 and grade 2 quality. So it's not as if, it's a problem with Saratoga on the whole. I think on the whole, they get tremendous fields, tremendous betting fields, and very deep competitive, mostly allowance optional claiming fields. But for some reason, sometimes when it gets to these top levels, you just don't have the same participation from the top level connections, I think, that you get on a daily basis to fill out the rest of the cards. But I agree with you guys and what you're saying, that racetracks, I've said before that there are some racetracks that need to close, but it's also, we need fewer stakes. We need fewer graded stakes. There are too many options right now for horses, too many overlapping options. And for an example, for the prime example for me, at least, look no further than this weekend when we have the Curlin Stakes on Friday at Saratoga, and then the Jim Dandy on Saturday, both for 3-year-olds, both going 1 1/8. One of them's graded, one of them's not. There's a little difference in the purse, but that's never been explained to me why we need two races. I understand. I think the Curlin is for horses that haven't won a stake, so it's restricted.
A stake over a mile.
So I get that it's at least a little bit different in terms of the conditions, but in general, it's the same race. And it seems redundant to me. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in this country, where there are just so many opportunities, a lot, sometimes at lower level tracks, but sometimes at larger tracks, where they just overlap, and it adds to what we already have now acknowledged as a problem, which is short fields and trainers not wanting to run their horses. We then have also too many stakes, too many grade stakes, too many opportunities for them to duck these kind of spots. That's the way I feel, at least.
Yeah, and you know, Joe, the only concern I have as a breeder, also, I'm going to put my breeding cap on, is that the lifeblood of pedigrees are black type. And I know we were joking around about it in the intro and everything like that, but the bottom line is that, you know, when you have 4 horses in a stake race, it not only affects the 4 owners and trainers of those horses, but everyone who owns a connective piece to those families. Who owns the brood mares, who owns the half siblings, who owns the second dam. So you know, you need to have. If the measuring stick for breeding is black type, is finishing first, second, and third in a stake, especially in a graded stake, where, you know, then it exponentially increases the value of these ancillary, you know, pieces, you have to have the same number of stakes and the same number of graded stake races, but we have to spread it out. It's got to be, you know, spread out amongst, you know, different geographic areas, maybe even different locations. There's some smaller racetracks out there that, you know, don't offer graded stake races, but maybe they have the purse money to be able to do it. Well, why not give them the opportunity to have, you know, showcase some of these, you know, grade 3s and have it be like the grade 3 is the most important race of their meet. As opposed to, and I'm not picking on New York because, you know, I'm involved there, but New York alone has like 36 grade 1 races during the course of the year, and literally 3 times as many, you know, graded stake races as that. And that's great for racing for us here. But, you know, is there a reason why, you know, Prairie Meadows doesn't have one of these, you know, graded stake races, or Lone Star can't take on one of these racetracks, one of these graded stake races to help their programs as well?
Well, I mean, I got to push back a little bit on the breeding thing, because like you said, you talked about foal crop and decreasing foal crop. Why do we need the same amount of graded stakes if there are fewer horses who are going to go through that breeding process? Why do we need the same number of stakes and graded stakes?
Right. I think what you're going to find is major pushback by the breeders to eliminate graded stake races. Now, some of these other stake races, like you mentioned, the Curlin, which is a great example, and that's a prep in essence for a race down the road, but it's a restricted stake race. So do you really need to have a restricted stake race where I don't even know if honestly, I don't know if it's a black type earning, vehicle. If it's not, then why not just call it a money allowance, you know, or a restricted allowance, as opposed to making it a stake race on the same day up against another stake race?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we kind of have the perfect storm to create these short fields now, where, you know, the top owners and trainers, they don't want to run their horses more than a handful of times a year. And, you know, there are too many opportunities for, you know, maybe a couple of lesser level horses to try to, you know, win a grade 2 or a grade 3, instead of being forced to try to take on the big boys or the big girls in a grade 1. And like you said, the declining foal crop as well. So we're, like Bill said, we're going to see a lot more of this, I think, unfortunately. And of course, it's going to be unpopular to say we should have fewer graded stakes and fewer stakes. I understand that's a little bit of a pipe dream, but, you know, I think realistically, in the same way that certain tracks are going to have to fall off the map over time, I think there are going to have to be fewer races, and thus like a fewer graded stakes and stakes races. Because if you have fewer and fewer races, eventually it's going to be like 50% stakes. Every other race is going to be a stakes, and then it cheapens, to me, the accomplishment of getting black type, you know, especially with the state bred races where you can get black type. There are plenty of restricted races where you can get black type placings, and I think that already cheapens it for the breed and for the breeding side of the business. But, you know, yeah, overall, I think there need to be fewer stakes opportunities over time, gradually over time. But it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's like the NBA or the NHL or Major League Baseball, who really, I think, should have shorter seasons. And I think a lot of players would agree that they should have shorter seasons, but they're never going to forego that revenue, or they're never going to forego that spotlight that they have for those 82 or 162 games. I think it's going to be very hard for the grade stakes committee and TOBA to, you know, forfeit some of these stakes races. But I honestly think it's going to be inevitable over time.
And can we just jump in on one more stake race that I think is worth note over the weekend, is the Shuvi. I have a new man crush on Royal Flag. I mean, there's a filly that you know, basically dances every dance, and I know Bill's going to say she doesn't run enough, but be that as it may, she's run 10 times and won 5 and finished second and third. I know, right?
The horses still do that, John? I didn't know
10
that.
times over a 3-year period. Yes.
Oh my God!
She's still standing.
An Iron Mare.
The Iron Mare, exactly.
Put her, and right next, who should go in the Hall of Fame first? Her or Gamine?
Oh, come on. Don't even go there. Don't even go there, please. But Royal Flag, listen, she's run 10 times, 5 wins, 3 seconds, 2/3. She's basically never been off the board. And she ran down Horologist, who got loose on the lead in the Shuby. And I know that was a grade 3, so it's not as exciting and sexy as some of the other races that we've talked about. But Royal Flag was 12 lengths behind at the top of the stretch and just blew by everybody. And again, she was the favorite in the race, so you'd expect her to win. But it was just to me, it was a really impressive move down the middle of the racetrack.
Yeah, that was a real flying finish, and that's kind of Joel Rosario's thing too. That's his MO is getting the timing right on these deep closers. Just a couple of other results from the weekend I wanted to mention before we move on. United won the Eddie Reed, who's kind of the kingpin in terms of California turf horses. Aside from that, there wasn't a ton of stakes action, but a couple of interesting horses. Well, Caravel is super, super nice. I mean, she's bought Bobby Flay bought a controlling interest from Elizabeth Merriman, who was the owner, breeder, and trainer. She's still going to keep a part ownership, but she's going to move to the Grand Motion barn. But it's so fun to watch her run, and this beautiful smoke gray mizzen mast filly. She's just a complete pleasure to watch. But I also wanted to shout out John and DJ Stable, who had 2 very good seconds over the weekend with Amendment 19 on Saturday behind Caramel Swirl. I think Caramel Swirl will probably see her next in the test. She's a very nice horse for Godolphin and Bill Mott, but Amendment 19, very nice horse, only run 3 times so far, so you think she's got forward to go. And also in with Lemieux on Sunday, who that was a tough beat. He ran his eyeballs out and was ahead every step of the way until the last jump. Just got run down, and just got run down by a Todd Pletcher filly. So nice couple of runs for you guys.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. It was a great weekend, and we're looking forward to their careers moving forward. Bill, Amendment 19 is a 3-year-old. She's run 3 times, but I promise you she'll run at least 3 more times before the end of the year.
Start the clock.
I'm going to hold you to that. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
A man crush is when a man has a crush on a man. It can't be a man crush.
Well, on a horse. On a horse.
You don't know how kinky he really is.
Yeah, exactly. I can have a man crush on a
The other thing is,
horse
like,
because I'm not going to try to.
That's the thing you should be interrupting the show to say. So exciting news. We are bringing on a new sponsor, some little hole-in-the-wall place called Spendthrift Farm. I don't know if you guys have heard of them, but no, Spendthrift has always been a supporter of the TDN and is now a supporter of the TDN Writers Room. So we're super excited to bring Spendthrift aboard. They had some action over the weekend, as always they do with Into Mischief. Sea Dreamer was named a new rising star on Saturday. She's owned by Ellen J. Foxwood and Gainesway Stables, trained by Simon Callahan at Del Mar. Super, super impressive. Also some exciting first crop sire, first yearling sire news for them. Lord Nelson was a first crop 2-year-old sire. He had an allowance winner at Ellis Park named Bueno Bueno, and it was a second straight win for that horse. And then a filly named Basking won her debut Friday at Gulfstream, and Lord Nelson actually won the Bing Crosby, which ironically is going to be run this weekend at Del Mar. And also Bolt Doro. I know a lot of people are excited about Bolt Doro. John, you probably have a little bit to say about him, but he's got his first yearlings selling right now. He has 13 entered for the Saratoga sale. He had I believe 4 at FASIC July. 3 of them sold, all for 6 figures. I've heard a lot of buzz about him. So he's definitely primed for success, at least in the sales ring this first year, would you say?
Yeah, and Bolt Euro has been a horse that we've been watching for the past couple of years. We actually pinhooked a yearling filly that we bought for $50 and sold for $165,000 at the FASIC Tipton July sale. And every single one of his horses sold for over $100,000, including that filly for $165,000. So he's an up-and-coming sire. I know that there's been a lot of positive buzz about him and his first yearling crop, and it'll be interesting to see how he does, a son of Medaglia.
Yeah, no, I think we're all excited. He was a nice horse to watch run too. He was a bit of a freakish talent, I would say, for sure. So we're super glad to have Spendthrift aboard, and with that, we'll be right back after this message from Spendthrift Farm. Owning multiple grade stakes winning racehorses like Decorated and Vader is attainable with a racing partnership with West Point Thoroughbreds. Partnerships enable you to spread your ownership across several horses for less than it costs to own one horse alone. This increases your racetrack action and your chances for a big horse. Learn more about why West Point Thoroughbreds is the gold standard in racing partnerships at westpointtb.com. And don't want to slight West Point here. They have First Captain going in the Curlin Stakes this weekend, the son of Curlin. So that'll be interesting. And Flightline worked, I believe, yesterday at Del Mar. Jeff Lifson posted on a video of it on Twitter. He's obviously a super exciting horse, $1 million purchase, had this big blowout maiden win, no-brainer TDN Rising Star, and then had a little bit of a setback, but it looks like he's getting back to the track, so that's really exciting. So good luck to West Point this weekend, specifically with First Captain, and we're looking forward to seeing Flightline back on the track. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a kind of negative slide we're taking into, as if it wasn't negative enough with getting rid of the tracks and the graded stakes and the stakes. We had a pretty big controversy last week at Saratoga last Thursday. Of course, all the interesting stuff always happens the day of or the day after our show. Marcus Vitale, we could have talked about this, but Marcus Vitale entered a horse at Saratoga. It was in the 4th race last Thursday. Spacing on the name of the horse right now, but she was last. And it was a huge kerfuffle within racing, as it should have been, because, he is a proven cheater and a proven, a guy who has been banned all over the place in this country, has dozens and dozens of violations and citations for, drugging horses and animal cruelty. And, we railed about him on the show when he popped up at Turf Paradise. We were like, what is Arizona doing? What is Turf Paradise doing? Lo and behold, he ends up at Saratoga 6 months later. Like that. I mean, that says it all right there, that, we were too optimistic to think it would be confined to Arizona and Turf Paradise. But I've got a lot to say about this. And he's got, Red Venus was the name of the horse. Thank you, John, my assistant with that information feed. But I want to toss it to Bill because I thought he did a great job in his week in review. It ran earlier this week, Monday, in Tuesday's TDN, talking about how the system has failed. So I want to let Bill have the floor.
Joe, in baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. And we see with Marcus Vitale, and actually, this, I don't think to any of us this would come as a surprise. In Vitality's case, 78 strikes and you're still not out, 93 strikes and you're still not out. And, I tried, when I wrote this, I tried to, obviously zero in on Vitale and everything that he's done. And my reporting was piggybacking off T.D. Thornton, who wrote a story when he got back into the entries or ran the horse. And I mean, he devoted like 1,000 words to everything this guy's ever done wrong. And he probably could have, done another 2,000. But, we've been talking about this, and this has been a subject that you have touched on. I know it's something that, makes your head want to explode. But, why is it in this sport you can, look, everybody deserves a second chance, maybe deserves a third chance. But, why is it in the sport that somebody like Vitale can just be a habitual offender of the rules? And we're not talking about late to the paddock, $50 fine for something like that, or a butte overage. I mean, this guy's record in his history is as bad as it gets in this sport. And in any other sport, in any other business, or anything else run where things are just done rationally and reasonably for the good of the sport, this guy, they would have told him to pack his bags a long time ago and he'd be working at Burger King right now. But no, in horse racing, that doesn't happen. And this was a cruel reminder of this, that, again, when he showed up at Turf Paradise, we all kind of chuckled, oh yeah, that's where he belongs. Too bad he's back, but he's at a crap track and who cares? Now he shows up at Saratoga and look, I don't really think that, and I don't want to go too far down this, I don't think it's really that appropriate to point the finger of blame at NYRA because, and TD explained, the Baffert decision where the judge said you can't really ban people, et cetera, probably played into this. So let's not blame NYRA, but let's blame the sport as a whole for its incredibly weak system and an incredible weakness when it comes to dealing with these type of people. It's an embarrassment. It's a black eye. And, maybe Horse Racing Integrity Safety Act and your friend Travis Tigert will make this situation better. We sure hope so. But in the meantime, I mean, this is as embarrassing as it gets. And it just makes you, think that the whole thing's a joke.
And Bill, I have a question for you that was brought up to me and I didn't know the answer, which is when a jockey gets fined and suspended, it's universal. That jockey, if he gets, banned or suspended, excuse me, in New York, gets 7 days. They cannot ride anywhere. How come it's not the same rules for trainers?
It is,
Okay.
John, because here's what happened is that Vitali has had plenty of suspensions along the way. But when he serves we had this 120-day suspension in Florida. When he's suspended by Florida, the Florida Parimutuel Board or whatever the hell they're called, he can't race anyplace else. But when the suspensions are done and he's licensed in a state, then he is, from a regulatory standpoint, he is free to run. And I think, and I would need more time to dig into this, but I think the problem was in Arizona when the Arizona Racing Commission decided. I mean, I'm sure they didn't even know who he was or what, and know anything. Oh yeah, this guy Marcus Vitali. Let's give him a license. Why not? Once he got that license in Arizona, he's a licensed trainer. And then again, I'm not 100% sure on this, but then other jurisdictions don't really have a basis for denying him a license. But the racetracks do have a right to ban him. So it is the same with the jockeys. But he served his time. He was out for a year and a half. You would hope the racing commissions, be it Arizona or anyone else, would say, all right, pal, you're not good for the game. We're not, you apply for a license. No, get lost. Go back to, flipping Whoppers in the back of Burger King. But Arizona didn't do that. They gave him a license and then he's back free to run. Right.
Because I remember when we talked about it, earlier on when he first got, a license in Arizona, where we went through actually the application. And on the trainer's application, it actually asked the question, have you ever been fined or suspended before? And either you check yes or no. If you check yes, then it's the duty of the racing authority to investigate. If he marks no, then he committed fraud.
Right.
So somebody dropped the ball there. Either he committed fraud on the application. I'm not saying that, or the racing authority just said, who's this guy? We don't know. We're just going to rubber stamp it like we do everybody else.
I think it's the latter is what happened. I would be pretty sure. Yeah.
Right. So that basically gave him the avenue to be able to say, well, now I have a current license and therefore I'm eligible for other licenses.
But I'm sort of letting Naira off the hook here, and I think it's kind of appropriate. But it looks like there's maybe only two other places he's been allowed to run: Presque Isle Downs and Lone Star, since he came out of Arizona. What's their excuse? They're privately, see, Naira is not a privately owned racetrack, or, the courts have decided it's not a privately owned racetrack. It's state affiliated, so they have to operate under different rules than the privately owned racetracks. What is Presque Isle Downs' excuse and Lone Star's excuse for saying, hey, Marcus, yeah, you won to 32 stalls. Okay, I got barn 6. Have a good meet, Marcus.
Right.
What is their excuse? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you could say for Naira is like you said with the Baffert thing, potentially maybe a little sloppiness there and not giving him a hearing, and then the court injunction, all that kind of maybe opened the door a little bit for Vitali. But I agree that, this is something that should have been stopped, at a lot lower levels than Naira. Yes. So it eventually, it's like every other problem in racing, it trickles up to the greatest levels and then embarrasses everybody to where you can't ignore it anymore. But yeah, the only thing I would blame Naira for is if going forward they don't, give him a hearing and ban him. I think they're a little bit more in control of what happens going forward now. But it's definitely possible. Sal Sinatra did it in Maryland when he kicked Wayne Potts out for being a program trainer for Marcus Vitali. So it's one of those things where it's too nice about racing to say someone's asleep at the wheel or asleep at the switch. Because the truth is there's nobody at the wheel or the switch. There is nobody in control. We have this kind of vague, apparition of enforcement and regulation with 33 different jurisdictions. And there's nobody who can step in, who has even the power to step in and say, no, this isn't going to happen. This guy is not going to represent our sport anymore, anywhere. And it can't happen unless we have this central regulatory body and an actual agency that's going to come in and clamp down and have a uniform standard across the industry. And I know we're a broken record and we keep saying wait for HISA, but it really is the best solution in a sport where we have no solutions right now. We have nothing to go on. There's no, the fact that he showed up there exposes not just the incompetence, but just the lack of presence of anybody in the industry to be able to crack down and regulate from a level higher than a racing commission. And that's the core problem. And, Marcus Vitale is just the symptom of it. If I were him, with no morals and would have no qualms about, people seeing me at a racetrack, knowing that they know I'm a cheat, I would have done the same thing. I would have gone to Saratoga, and said, I dare you to stop me. And that's what he did. And, nobody stopped him.
Right. And you can point fingers at a lot of people, but also I'm going to point it at the owner at Cross Sabers Farm, because they should know better. They should know what this guy's record is. They should know that, this guy, like Bill said, hasn't had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 100 chances. And that's just what he's caught. He's just got caught that many times. They should know better than to give a horse like this to a guy like that. And I don't know if they're relatives or if they're friends or if they're drinking buddies or whatever. But, again, I point back to the owners, where you have to be conscious of what's going on with your trainer. And you have to understand, what the rationale is behind picking a trainer. You can't just pick a trainer because they win races. You have to look into their background. You have to, if you were employing anybody else to handle an asset, if you gave, $1 million of your money to a money manager that had time and time again put you in Ponzi schemes and fraud and had, black marks all up and down their FINRA record, you would be deserved to lose that money because you've done it. So I don't know, why Cross Sabers, if Vitale owns a piece of it or anything like that, but there's almost no excuse for giving a horse to a person like this.
Totally. As usual, there's a lot of blame to go around, but I don't like that these things happen, but again, I think that it's good to get this out in the open. So I think there are very few deniers left in terms of how, much work racing has to do to clean itself up. But for whatever deniers there are, like for the Horsemen's group that are suing to stop Heiser from happening, it's good that these things happen. So they have to get out there and defend, the current status quo system, which they don't, because they can't.
Well, that's another question. And, we don't talk enough about this, but I know we're running a little short on time here. But, Joe, I think that, the Horse Racing Safety Integrity Act, I think it'll come to be someday, but it's not happening in July 2022 because of these lawsuits. And at the end of the day, and the main force behind the movement to stop it is the national HBA. And how did they get up, look in the mirror in the morning and say, Marcus Vitale ran a horse in Saratoga yesterday, but I'm fine with that. Let's keep the status quo. Which is essentially what they're saying. That's horrible, absolutely horrible. And I've written this before. Not only are they doing bad by the sport, they're doing bad by the 99.3% of honest trainers out there that are getting their brains beaten in by these guys. So it's to me it's just horrible that they are keeping this thing, and they're going to lose in the end anyway. Right. So what are they doing? But anyways, it makes all of them look bad, like you said. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of honest, clean trainers who support these horsemen's groups and maybe even support this lawsuit, but it makes them look like it's a bunch of Marcus Vitales. Like they have something to hide and to protect. Yes. And that's why they're suing this. That's why they're suing to stop this, because, they don't want the cheaters that they represent to get popped. Like, that's what it looks like. Like, I know that's not the case with most of them, but when you're suing to stop the best possible solution right now to clean up the sport, that's what it's going to look like.
Well, thank God, because of the suit, the byproduct is going to be that these poor indigent attorneys are going to get paid because I know that's really why they took the case. It's just a matter of they need to pay their bills.
They're and it's like they're in the realm of the stop the steal attorneys.
Oh, no question.
Too.
No question about it.
It's the same kind of guys for sure. Joining a West Point Thoroughbreds partnership can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie among people surrounding high-class horses and stakes action for a fraction of the cost of trying to do it on your own. Learn more at westpointtb.com. We'll be right back after this message from West Point Thoroughbreds.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. With over 500 clients in the horse business, they have proven strategies to save you taxes. Learn more about how they can help you at www.greenco.com. All right, so we're so thrilled to bring on this week the owner of our latest sponsor. We're super proud to have them on board, Spendthrift Farm, Eric Gustavson. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thank you guys. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're super glad to have you, and we want to thank you face to face for coming on board and sponsoring the show. That's a big get for us, as they say. So I just kind of wanted to ask a little bit about your background. I'm not sure if you have a racing background or if it just came to be with your involvement with Spendthrift. What's your story and how you got involved in the racing business?
Yeah, so my background was only in racing and only as a spectator up until Wayne bought the farm. Wayne Hughes, my father-in-law, married to Wayne's daughter, and it was for him, a hobby for so many years. And then he bought the farm, kind of turned it into a business. And at that point, he asked me to come along and take this ride with him, which I decided to do. And so it was a very steep learning curve for me. I came in with eyes wide open, and just learned as we went now. So I've been here for 15 years now at the farm. I used to commute from California, but now we live here. But I've learned a lot in that time, and I've grown to really love it.
But just wanted to follow up on that. What are some of the things that you would point to that you really had to learn?
Oh, geez. I mean, I started off doing a little bit of everything. Not like I was mucking stalls or anything like that, but I was the marketing director for the farm. At the time, we had one stallion, so there wasn't a ton of work to do. But I would go out to the sales with the guys and learn everything from reading confirmation on the horses to it's really running a small business from our perspective. My wife and I are both involved. She's very much behind the scenes where she likes it, but it was just a real switch for us.
Hey, Eric, thanks for joining us. It's Bill Finley. And the news of the last couple of weeks, the unfortunate news that Galileo passed away, means that Into Mischief, by the numbers and also by reputation, is the #1 sire in the world right now. And, obviously, I'm not saying anybody was glad that Galileo passed. That was a tragedy for everybody involved. But what does it mean for Spendthrift now from a business aspect, or more even so from a sort of team pride aspect, to have the #1 stallion?
Yeah, that's and just to hear you say that is like crazy. I can't, it's hard to really appreciate all that means and all that comes with that, especially from his humble beginnings. I mean, we are, it's hard to imagine and count how blessed we are with that horse and what he's done for us, putting us on the map in a big way. And I think Malibu Moon did that himself when we brought him over. That was a big move for us. But to have Into Mischief is just, it's the classic case of a rising tide lifts all boats. He's our rising tide, and he just brings so much attention to the farm. He's so, just powerful and dominant in so many categories as a stallion. It's just mind blowing that you could ever have one like this, and one that's considered one of the all-time greats, if not the best in the world. That's crazy. That's really humbling.
And Eric, you mentioned before that you were, in the past decade and a half, you've been going out to the yearling sales with the guys and looking at confirmation and trying to get, an idea of values on horses. When you guys go to yearling sales starting this year, and you're looking at possibly, stallion prospects as yearlings, does the changing of the rules have anything to do with the changing of the valuations as far as how far you guys want to go on a colt?
Well, I guess we'll kind of see that now coming up in Saratoga and in September at Keeneland. That's really hard to say. This is a really uncharted territory. I think, we'll probably go with whatever the market's doing and just do our normal thing where we set a number, and if it's too high, it's too high. We'll let it go, and if not, we'll be right there. We're always in stallion acquisition mode, whether it's at the sales or off the racetrack. So that we've been asking ourselves that question, actually, John. I don't really know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, Spendthrift has come a long way, as you said. You basically used to have one stallion, and now it seems like you guys are acquiring more stallions every single year. How do you guys, first of all, how do you figure out which stallions you want to target? But then secondly, as the business grows, how do you stay disciplined to where you're not just buying up everything, you're really focusing on quality rather than just quantity?
Right. Well, one of the things that we've established over the years, and most people know about, is a share the upside program. So we try to always bring in a horse that is a good fit for the share the upside, a horse or maybe more than one. And then, especially in recent years, we've tried to make a big splash with top stallions. It's our goal to always have the best crop coming in of all the farms each year, which we don't always reach. But I feel like we have done that a couple times in the last year. So it's a blend of different types of stallions. It has to do with what's available. It has to do with what we already have here at the farm. We look at it as a lot of times, if we don't, not that we want to buy every stallion, as you said, but if we don't, somebody else will. And that's X number of mares that are going to be off the market. So,
Hey, Eric, from the racing standpoint, we see such an involvement with the MyRacehorse concept with Spendthrift Farms. And I think most people are generally in agreement that MyRacehorse has been a good thing for the sport to bring, literally thousands of people from the grassroots level and get them involved in ownership and in racing in general. But talk to us about why MyRacehorse has been a good thing for Spendthrift.
Well, yeah, that's Wayne really jumped onto that idea when it was presented to us. That's kind of his philosophy in general is just whatever we can do. What can we do to get more people interested in racing, to get more people to the tracks, to sort of generate new ownership and that sort of thing. And when he was presented with the idea of MyRacehorse, he and the rest of us in concert with Wayne at the time were really pro this idea and going all in on it. And it's really produced a lot of fruit. We have 40,000 people now that are on the that we've increased interest, viewership, ownership through MyRacehorse. One of the great happening is it's developed from the micro share into also offering more of a fractional ownership, more of like a traditional partnership or syndicate. And we're on the verge of transitioning some of those people into full-on ownership, which I think is significant. If you can scale that out times whatever, and you have people that are actually coming out and going to the sales looking for horses on their own or in partnership with a few others, that's a significant help for the industry. The more eyes we have, the more interest we have, the more betting dollars we have, the better the whole industry is. So we're just big fans of the concept and trying to do all we can and do all the good we can through participating with it.
Yeah, and the farm has always been on the cutting edge of innovation, whether it's MyRacehorse or helping breeders along with showing a profit. I mean, that's always been one of your calling cards. And Eric, one of the things that I really resonated with me was you wrote a really great op-ed piece during COVID about the need for diversity in the sport, and I thought it was a really nice piece. I thought that you really kind of laid your emotions out there and basically said, and I'm not quoting it, but basically you said the old boys club stuff has to go. And now you're a member of the board at the Breeders' Cup. So how are you going to be able to kind of transition that mindset to the old boys club?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think it just, you have to be bold. You have to be loud and not back down from your positions, and hope that you can bring some other people along, so you're not the lone wolf out there with your your mindset, your viewpoint. I think that it's we're all capable of that. We just have to see. We need to stop. I'm getting off on a little tangent here, but the industry is so fractious, and so Bill, you wrote that piece the other day. I thought it was spot on about the issues with lack of uniformity and medications and things like that. And this industry cannot grow unless these things start to change. We need to have innovation. We need to have inclusion, and we need to have uniformity to the point where we're not, we're, as Bill said in his piece, that we're dysfunctional, and he referred to the weak regulatory system. These are the kind of things that I would like to help change, because we're just stuck. We're just going to be flatline like this, or like this, if we don't innovate and start coming together. And there was a lot of talk about the pro and con about the government coming in, being involved with control over the drug issues, and a lot of people are against it. But my feeling on that is just like, we have to do something. If this is the only way to do it, then so be it. I mean, let's be uniform and have some kind of oversight that is that doesn't, that has some teeth.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. We were literally just talking about that before you came on. So that's for damn sure. We definitely need that uniformity and that oversight. All right, Eric, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for coming on, and then thanks to you and everybody at Spendthrift for coming aboard the show. The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. As this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Eric Gustavson will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. Learn more about how they can help you at www.greenco.com. We'll be right back after this message, funnily enough, from The Green Group.
Why do the most successful owners, breeders, and horsemen select the Green Group as their tax advisor? We simply save them money and know how to make them more successful. Over the past 40 years, founder Leonard Green has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport. His in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with cutting-edge tax-saving strategies, has produced positive results for his clientele and has made the Green Group the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the business. For a confidential and complimentary consultation, contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Legacy Bloodstock. If you think that 50 years combined experience in the horse business could benefit your program, give Tommy or Wendy a call. They personally advise on each horse as if they were their own. All right, so we had a little bit of sponsorship crossover here. Bueno, who I mentioned in the Spendthrift talk, is also a Legacy grad, the first repeat winner for Lord Nelson, who stands at Spendthrift. And last week, Legacy had their 100th black type winning graduate with Naval Laughter, who took the Grade 3 Modesty Stakes at Arlington. Obviously, that's the prep for the Grade 1 Beverly D, so we'll probably see her in there. So it's a huge milestone, and congratulations to Tommy and Wendy and everybody at Legacy. 100 black type winners. That's pretty damn good, John.
It really is, especially for a boutique operation, like they have. And it just shows that quality comes from everywhere. I mean, it come from smaller, really hands-on programs like they have. And also, this is like a book 3 yearling. So that's why you have to look at all the horses in the sale. So kudos to our sponsors. I'd like to think it's because they're sponsors of ours that they're having such great success.
Yeah, no, I mean, we always take credit for everything good that happens in this industry. So we're definitely going to take credit for this as well.
Just didn't see
Bill,
that.
Twitter is a social media channel.
I guess you just don't
people send their opinions.
Book face thing?
But yeah, book face, exactly. Exactly. But Twitter is upbeat.
Oh,
it's
okay.
always positive. Yes.
Bill is what they call a lurker. He's a lurker on Twitter. He doesn't actually post.
He was never convicted for that. That was only alleged. He was never convicted.
All right, so there was a little bit of racing Twitter drama. In fact, there's always drama on racing Twitter. Everybody's always up in arms about something, and I honestly respect it. At least there's somebody's on the beat here to try to suss out racing's ne'er-do-wells. This is a case where I don't know if the guy is a cheater or not. I'd have no strong opinion one way or the other. And even if I did, I couldn't prove it one way or the other. But Saturday, or was it Sunday? Was it Saturday or Sunday, John?
It was the 25th.
It was 25th, so that was Saturday.
No, Sunday, yeah.
So Sunday, I think is the 8th race at Saratoga. It was an off the turf race at 1.1 miles. I think it was originally supposed to be a marathon race, but came off the turf, shortened it up to 1.1 miles. There was a horse named You're to Blame, who basically ran off the screen for Orlando Noda, who's like usually a mid-level claiming type trainer in New York. He had his first like big horse was T Loves a Fight, who was a nice New York bred stakes winner and hard knocking, old type of New York bred horse. But, a lot of people raised eyebrows at You're to Blame's win because his recent form had not been good. And, he did not lay over the field the way it ended up looking on the racetrack. And also, I think because he had been in the barns of Todd Pletcher and Chad Brown, and more recently Ron Moquette, who's like a little bit of a lower percentage trainer than those guys. But it's such obvious form reversals are always going to attract attention. And Andy Sterling, who I think usually is very careful about what he says, kind of hinted at it at the suspiciousness of it, at least on the Fox Sports broadcast. He didn't accuse anyone of anything, but at least brought up the suspicion that comes from these kind of things. And I think it's an interesting discussion because, like I said, I don't have a strong opinion one way or another on this guy, but it just the culture of racing that we're talking about and that we were talking about in the Marcus Vitale segment, it breeds this type of suspicion, and it sucks. It sucks for everybody involved. It sucks for us. It sucks for the trainer if they're really not doing anything wrong. It sucks for the sport to have, such cynicism permeate amongst its core customer base. And that's something that we're going to need to get rid of as well over time. But it's going to take a lot of time to quell and get rid of that suspicion, where I'm sure it's frustrating for guys who, are doing things the right way, and they'll have a successful streak, or they'll have, a couple of claims that turn out well, and all of a sudden everyone's knocking on their door calling them a cheater. And, to Orlando Noda's credit, I gotta give him props for this. If you go on Twitter and you go on racing Twitter and you search You're to Blame and the discussion that was had, he was on there, and he's pretty active on Twitter, or one of his brothers, whoever, and was defending why the horse ran so well, and said he cutting back to 1.1 miles from 1.5 miles. He was in the Brooklyn last time out. He was dropping in class. He might have had a vet issue or something that got worked out. I appreciate that he was at least out there and not scurrying away and hiding and being like, well, you'll think what you're going to think, because I think that it did happen a lot of times. Like, I remember Jason Service. He would just never say anything. He would hate talking to the press because he knew what questions were coming, that how are you winning at this percentage? How did you do this with this horse? And he just hated talking to the media because of that. And at least, whether or not he's cheating, Orlando Noda has the sense to get out there and defend himself. And I respect that at the very least. But I wonder if you guys have any thoughts about this episode.
Joe, the only thing I'd say is, you're looking at this as sort of an isolated incident, and this could happen to you're not okay. Okay. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this was not the only time this has happened with his barn. I mean, you go back and he's been training for a relatively short period of time, but there are a lot of horses that come into his barn and run a lot better. So, what does that all mean? I have an opinion, but I'm going to keep it to myself for now. But that also, raised a question, getting back to some of the other things that we're dealing with Vitale and all the other things. Let's not say Orlando Noda, but Joe Smith had claimed 5 horses and moved every single one up by 20 buyer points and won with all 5. Well, none of them passed. None of them failed a drug test. To the best of my knowledge, Orlando Noda has never had a horse fail any kind of drug test. So what do you do? And, we do rail against, and me in print, the system is broken. It is. But this also points out the difficulties of what does horse racing do about this sort of thing. You can't just say, well, your horses run better when they come into your barn, so therefore we're throwing you out of the sport. It's not nearly that simple. So, I just want to raise this possibility and say that, I don't have the answers.
Yeah, and I think I'm all for a good conspiracy, as much as the next guy. But when I was doing my due diligence on this situation, you hear things, you investigate them. Obviously, I'm not an investigative reporter like you guys are, but we have sources and talk to people, and usually when a horse jumps up and improves the way that a horse, does, I would call to question. I personally usually look back and say, okay, how long ago did a horse, replicate this number? Was it a cheaper horse that jumped up and did something? Is the trainer a high percentage trainer? Or does the trainer have a reputation? And really, when you look at this, if you took the trainer's name out of the equation, you say, okay, the horse last time lost to Lone Rock and Tis a Magician. Now, since that time, both of them have won Grade 2 races.
But wasn't he beaten like 30 lengths in that race?
He was beaten 8 lengths at the top of the stretch, and then Giroux, gave up on him. Okay, so he did lose by 16 lengths. I get it, and he was 40-1 in the race, so he probably should have lost by 16 lengths. Okay, but now he was back on Lasix. The horse has back class. Before that race, he made $750,000 on the racetrack. Multiple stake winner, multiple grade placed. And he must be big and good looking because he sold for $400,000 as a yearling and then came back a couple of years later in a horses of racing age sale and sold for over $400,000 again. So, you sit there and you say, okay, there's some things that the horse has, some back class and the horse has, some ability. And then you look at the trainer's number again, taking the name out, you look at it and you say, he was 7% winner at Saratoga and 16% overall. Those are not going to be big alarm bells in my mind. It's not like the guy's coming in and he's a 23, 25, 27% winner. And you say, okay, well, that's the case. Now, I will also say, I don't know Marmoset at all. I don't know his training techniques at all. But I know from walking around Saratoga, you look at Todd Pletcher's barns, you look at Chad Brown's barns, they have so many freaking horses that not only do they have horses on the main track, they have a barn on the back, by Oklahoma. And then those two trainers in particular, I'm talking about Pletcher and Chad Brown, also have barns full of horses at the standard bred track. That's how many freaking horses they have. So you wonder if a horse, 7-year-old, 6-year-old, like this would be lost in the shuffle as far as, hey, he's not in the main barn. He's not even in the B barn. He may be in the C barn. Well, a trainer who is not only his own trainer, but also he grooms, he's an exercise rider, all those things. He's handling the nebulizer on the horse. You can see where a small outfit would be able to get the last bit of juices out of a good old class horse, especially in a race that was supposed to be on the turf that got scratched off the turf and then scratched down to just, quote unquote dirt only horses and kind of turf horses that wanted to, race over the racetrack. So I can't honestly point to this one particular situation and in my mind say, well, it's obviously that this was a cheat situation. Yeah. I would like to look at the whole body of work of each trainer before we kind of make a cast a judgment. But I can honestly say that I can't make a case either way about,
right.
Is there a problem or is there not a problem? And to me, well, then you have to go by he's this trainer or a trainer is guilty, when he's proven it, not the other way around.
John, I'm going to accuse you of something I never thought I would accuse you of.
Please.
You're Mr. Wishy-washy here.
On this one, I honestly can't tell you.
Listen,
wait, didn't you say the same thing? Didn't you say I can't honestly give you an opinion?
No, I said I don't want to get sued. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna try to bridge both worlds here because I think that this horse did figure in this race and he did have back form that made sense. What didn't make sense is him winning off by however many lengths he won. Now you could say that a bunch of other horses just didn't run their races. The favorite had just run 8 days ago. I think this in particular instance, there are plenty of reasons why this horse won and why this horse could have found that good race. I don't think it necessarily has to be that he's taking an edge. But the problem is, just to broaden this out again, is that racing's toothless regulatory system has left it up to the racing public to guess whether or not these guys are cheating every time there's a horse that has a form improvement. And sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes it's a little bit more murky, like this case, where, that's not a good thing when you have lost such credibility with your customer base that they are instantly suspicious of anything that could be just from a good training job to, blatant cheating. Nobody knows. It's all guesswork. And that's the problem. And that's, a lot of times racing talks about, we in racing talk about the PR problem we have with the PETA types and the animal rights people. And that is a problem for sure. But I don't think we talk enough about how our current broken system has led diehard fans of this sport to be super suspicious and to hold everyone in, be contemptuous of everyone that improves a horse, no matter what the circumstances may be. Like, I don't blame people for getting on Twitter and bashing Orlando Noda and saying that this was a juice job. I'm not going to say that, but racing has left people, without any kind of enforcement, any kind of, definitive answers on who's cheating and who's not and what they're doing and what this guy's doing, without any answers, when we haven't gotten answers on for decades, then people are left to fill in the blanks themselves. And I think, not saying this is the case here, a lot of innocent people are going to be dragged through the mud and defamed because of it. So that's, I think, kind of an underreported aspect of the way racing has conducted itself for decades, is the lack of trust that racing fans have in their own sport, and that to me is something that absolutely needs to be fixed as soon as possible. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it kills me that racing fans have that much cynicism, and I don't blame them for having that cynicism. I feel both of those ways at the same time. It sucks and it's depressing, but it's logical for people to be as cynical as they are in racing.
Yep. And again, the bottom line is the 3 horses in the race that were main track only finished first, second, and third.
The old 13, 14, 15
yeah,
try.
So it played out the way that everyone thought it was going to play out.
Yeah.
Or at least it's plausible. It's definitely plausible. But you're right, Joe. The fact that we have to sit here and talk about it.
Yeah.
Really, who cares about a rained off turf, to dirt race, allowance race claiming 80,000 hours at Saratoga? Like, it normally wouldn't be an issue.
Right. It's the era of suspicion that calls every little instance like this into question. And racing doesn't really have a leg to stand on when it just let Marcus Vitale run a couple of days prior at the, most impressive and exciting meet in America. We'll be right back after this message from Legacy Bloodstock.
Being a small family business, I guess we're part of a dying breed. We're really grateful for the people that entrust us. We know it's a huge responsibility.
We're always with your horse every step of the way. When it comes to being at the sales ground, showing your horses, we are with your horse.
Just driving up and down the road every day, there's not a time that I don't look out and feel a responsibility to the sport, the animal, the people that come to invest in the game. I want to see as many people enjoy this sport as they possibly can, because we do have the most beautiful sport in the world.
Not just one, but 2 new sponsorships to announce on this week's TDN Writers Room. The TDN Writers Room is now brought to you by the Minnesota Thoroughbred Association's 2021 yearling sale, coming August 29th at Canterbury Park. A quality selection of yearlings from Kentucky Stallions, top Kentucky Stallions, like Taprit, Race Day, Practical Joke, Cross Traffic, and Wicked Strong. Regional yearling sales have proven to be a great source for affordable and classy future racehorses. Download a catalog today at MinnesotaBred.com. We're super excited. We're big in Minnesota. I don't know if anybody knows that, but we're super excited to welcome them aboard as well. And, Canterbury Park does a lot of good things. They have 3 Minnesota bred maiden special weights at Canterbury tonight. Big fields, great betting opportunities, 10% pick 5 takeout. Definitely get involved with the Minnesota program, whether it's at the yearling sales or betting Canterbury Park. Very underrated and worth your time for sure.
10%? Yeah.
Yeah. Pick 5. We had the guy on the show. You don't remember this?
10% takeout.
Yeah. Was that your Minnesota accent?
Yeah.
Had some sad news yesterday. Was reported in today's TDN by Bill Finley, and from the story in the Chicago Daily Herald, that Arlington Park employees have gotten their layoff notices, which they'll be terminated at the end of the meet, or at least within 2 weeks of the end of the meet, which is scheduled to be September 25th. We touched on this a little bit last week with the news that Churchill was applying for 2022 Illinois dates, and we were hoping against hope that meant, there was a chance Arlington would stick around. It seems like that's not the case. And this is kind of the nail in the coffin now for Arlington. And, I mentioned this last week, but I was there for the first time a couple weeks ago when I was in Chicago, and it really hit me how worthless it is to close a track that's doing well, that's clean, that's beautiful. Like, we talk about tracks needing to close, and I think that does happen over time, but this is not one of those tracks. Like, Arlington is not one of those places that's decrepit and falling apart and nobody goes there anymore. There are plenty of racetracks like that in America. Arlington Park is not one of them. I was there on like a gloomy, rainy day, random Saturday, no big races. The feature was probably like a, Illinois bred allowance or something. And there were thousands of people there. There were thousands of people there excited to be at the races, all with their programs and having a good time. And it just kills me that this is happening. This institution in American racing and in Illinois racing in particular is going away because Churchill Downs has some crappy casino 10 miles away that it wants to protect the business of, as if anybody cares about another, casino that's just littering the landscape in some, podunk town in Illinois. Like, no, it's so unnecessarily selfish and borderline evil to me, honestly, to be closing tracks like Arlington and Hollywood Park. And at least with Hollywood, you had the excuse that they were going to sell the land and for a lot of money and eventually build the football stadium there. With Arlington, it's just going to become a shopping mall. Like, it's unless the Bears move there, that might happen, but that's not why they're selling it. They're just selling it because they want to get rid of it and they don't want to pay all the upkeep when they have a casino that's much cheaper to run shortly thereafter. And that's not even to get into the awfulness of, lobbying alongside the Illinois horsemen for years and years to get a casino license, and then you finally get it, and then you pull up the stakes and leave. It's just, it was sickening to me, and it made me feel really bad leaving that day, that this place is going to be basically demolished for no reason. But I wonder if Bill has any, or John have any thoughts.
Yeah, I just add one thing to it, and Joe, I appreciate everything you said, but at the end of the day, and this is something that we haven't touched upon that much, but this is a business, and I'm not saying that Churchill Downs is doing the right thing. I agree with everything you said on this, but the business of horse racing now really sadly revolves around slot machines and casinos, and that's what it's really, not with Del Mar or Naira, but with all these, tracks you say that should be closed. Why does Presque Isle Downs even exist?
Going after Presque Isle today.
Yeah, I'm going rough on them. I'm being a big bully picking on a little country track that nobody cares about. But why does that even possibly exist? Because of slot machines and casino revenues. And at the end of the day, for Churchill Downs, which is, they don't make any apologies about what they care most about is the bottom line. What it's really about is the bottom line and their shareholders. And obviously, in the business of casino gaming, they're a casino company. They're not a racing company. They figured out they're a lot better off for their gaming and casino companies to get rid of Arlington Park. Case closed.
Yeah, and the other business side of it, Bill, that I would add on to it is that a lot of these racetracks are starting to see the writing on the wall where we've been through it. We see that, there's breakdowns. We see that there's, people are up in arms. There's PETA revolution against us. There's all kinds of things that, aside from, Baffert and some of our big races.
Do you realize we almost got to the very end of the show without
using the B word?
We could have been the first time in like 37 consecutive episodes.
I know, but I get paid per Baffert reference. Okay. So, but a lot of these racetracks, are seeing the changes that are going on in the landscape and the political views. And they're concerned. And then on top of that, there's a couple of states that are out there, allegedly Illinois being one of them, Pennsylvania definitely being one, where from a political standpoint, there are people that are trying to decouple the racetracks from the, from the casinos. And if that happens, if you look at the landscape and the financials of the racetracks that are in the country right now, that are basically, a lot of them are being propped up by casinos. And then if they get, the approval to decouple racetracks from parimutuel licenses, from casino licenses, it is going to be the death knell for a lot of racetracks. Yeah. And I think that's what Churchill Downs is also looking at, is they're saying, okay, is Arlington Park going to fall under this if Illinois is successful in decoupling? And therefore, we want to be on the casino side. We don't want to be on the racetrack side.
Yeah, except that they're hastening that process by getting rid of Arlington Park. And, they're not even giving Arlington Park a chance to succeed with the casino license attached to it. And to me, that's the biggest problem. And a lot of people have is that they acted for years as if they were acting in the best interest of Illinois horsemen and Arlington Park. And then they turned around and said, man, no thanks. And I think that's a problem that a lot of people have with it. And also, I'm not privy to Arlington's financials. I know the racing product has gotten worse over the years. That's undeniable. But, just anecdotally from being out there and seeing the crowd on like a gloomy Saturday with nothing going on, it's hard for me to believe that they're losing so much money that there can't be a workable solution, especially if you have a casino attached to it.
Yeah, I think it's better to get out early rather than late. You want to get rid of a claiming horse one race too early than one race too late. You want to get rid of a broodmare, one fall early before she gets too old. And I think that from a publicly traded company's standpoint, if they're looking at it strictly from a cold calculating, we're going to look at the numbers. They want to get out now while there's still a possibility for other, pro racing groups to come in and prop up a price on the land and the facility than to get out after it's been decoupled, or it looks like it's going to be decoupled, where then you only have really, people who want to make it into a shopping mall, or the Chicago Bears that want to make it into a training facility. So I can't, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I can't complain to Churchill Downs that they're not doing the right thing. From a racing standpoint, yeah, I would love to see Arlington be, a boutique meet and be like a Kentucky Downs where you have, 4 or 5 weeks of racing, of top racing, and have it work out. But unfortunately, that's not the way of the world in publicly traded companies.
There is good news. Before they're done, we're going to see the first and last ever running of the Arlington 750,000.
Well, it was
instead of the Arlington Million.
Well, it's the purse of 750,000,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Here I am trying to make an impassioned plea, and we have the bloodless hyper capitalists saying, "Yeah, bury them and
bury them for the dollar."
Bill making fun of the Arlington Million. So
well, he's making fun of everybody today. Presque Isle, me, you,
anybody
Arlington
can get
750. Exactly. He's just spraying it all over the place.
But no, I mean, it's definitely a bummer that Arlington seems like it's going to go away. But yeah, it's tracks. There are a lot of tracks on the list that should close before Arlington Park. I think we can agree with that. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland. All right, so just a quick rundown of what to look for this weekend. It's the sprinters that are gonna take the spotlight on Saturday because we have 2 Grade 1 races: the Bing Crosby at Del Mar and the Alfred G. Vanderbilt at Saratoga. Both Grade 1s. The Bing Crosby is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I'm partial to the Vanderbilt. Obviously, both going to be good races. The Vanderbilt looks like it's going to have Mischievous Alex, Lexitonian, Forense Fire. I think Chancet is in there as well. So a couple of interesting names. We also have the Bowling Green and the Jim Dandy this Saturday at Saratoga. We have the Curlin on Friday, which friend of the show, West Point, is going to have the favorite in there in first captain. Jim Dandy, we're hopefully going to see Essential Quality. And then Sunday, we have a couple of races. We have the Grade 1 Clement L. Hirsch at Del Mar, as well as the Amsterdam, which is a Grade 2 for 3-year-old sprinters at Saratoga, and a couple stakes at Woodbine as well. And don't want to neglect Glorious Goodwood, which is going on right now. There's the Sussex Stakes, which is a Group 1 today. And then we got a couple other big races throughout the rest of the week. So lots to look forward to. And especially, I think Saratoga, as we get into August, we're really going to ramp up into every weekend being a really big marquee weekend, and we'll be up there in a couple weeks to celebrate it as well as ourselves. All right, so that's going to do it for this week's edition of the TDN Writers Room, presented by Keeneland. Reminder to take part in the Keeneland November experience this fall. Entry deadline is Monday, August 2nd. You can enter and learn more at november.keeneland.com. I want to thank Bill Finley, John Green, our Green Group Guest of the Week, Eric Gustavson, our producer, Patty Wolf, our associate producer, Katie Ritz, and our editors, Anthony LaRocca, Aaliyah LaRocca, and Nathan Wilkinson. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back on Zoom next week, and then yo-yoing back to the studio the week after that, and the week after that is our 100th show at Saratoga. See you next week.